I enlisted in 1981, which was the era of Ronald Reagan. You know, he was our president back then. We were still in the Cold War, still concerned about, you know, the possibilities of, you know, the imminent nuclear threat and what all that meant.
Well, in 1949, I had just graduated from high school, and I didn't know much about what was going on. And as far as I know, to me, it was very peaceful, comfortable, and I was destined to be drafted, so I said, I'm going to join the Air Force.
The country was recovering from World War II. I was, at the time I entered service, I was in college. We had a large number of returning Vietnams, so our college enrollment at the small college I was at was about twice or a little bit better than normal because of the returning vets.
Well, I was drafted in 1966. So at that point in time, you know, Vietnam was going pretty strong.
Well, because that's what people did. You know, when you came of age, well, grew up, of course, in World War II, and we call them the greatest generation for good reason, of course. And they went away and did what the country needed them to do at the time, and that's what everybody did, and we thought that that was entirely normal.
I enlisted back then because it was something that was good for me, but something I wanted to do. My father was an Army veteran from World War II, and I've had many family members that served, so it gave me an opportunity to serve my country and also learn a skill along the way.
We were passionate about serving our country, and my brothers had both served, and it was kind of like a family obligation, but I wanted to do it. I had convictions about the spread of communism at that time, and I thought that what we were doing in Vietnam was the right cause.
I didn't choose it. Being drafted, but there was a little thing that happened. Do they call it the induction station or the reception station, whatever I went to in Dallas once I got my draft notice, and it gave me about 30 days, and then went down there and you get a physical. And we were sitting in a room, and the sergeant was at a desk calling up people individually, and I went up there and he says, do you want to be in the Army, Air Force, or Marines? And Navy, I think he included Navy. I said, well, Air Force. I didn't know that we were going to have a choice. And he said, you look like Army to me, and checked Army. And I'm sure that that was just somewhat of a requirement, because everybody in there that I know went straight into the Army to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training.
Well, because they were the ones flying airplanes. During World War II, of course, I very avidly followed the war news on a battered little radio and studied my homework by lamplight and so forth. And so when I was a child helping in the fields, chopping cotton or thinning corn or something, I'd see an old steerman fly over every now and then, and less often a DC-3, and I'd say I need to do that one of these days rather than what I'm doing here grubbing in the dirt. So ironically, years later I wound up flying the DC-3 for a number of years.
I got to fly most of my entire career. I started out in an airlift, military airlift command wing in Mobile, Alabama. Got to fly to South America.
A large part of about 3 years over there, a couple of years I was flying air evac, hauling patients out of Vietnam to the Philippines and Tokyo to the larger hospitals.
My job was anti-submarine warfare. So I was aboard an airplane, a large airplane, where we hunted Russian subs, and we used radar and sonar and other various kinds of detection abilities. And so mostly that's what we did. We also monitored shipping, and we did a lot of intelligence work, filming various things. My squadron, for example, was the squadron that discovered the missiles in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
This was probably, well, I know the exact day. It was March the 8th. Went to Vietnam in January and went to Dong Ha, which is 7 miles south of DMZ. And like I say, I didn't traipse through the jungle with a rifle. I was in a transportation company. I was the supply sergeant there. But one morning, about 10 minutes till 7, a rocket, well, several rockets hit in the area. One of the rockets hit one of the GP medium tents. I forget exactly, but they may hold, 15, 20 guys on cots. And 9 were killed and 17 were wounded. And so that was the worst morning, worst day of my time in Vietnam.
Since I was an engine buildup, sometimes we would have to take off, haul an engine, and we had to go to French Morocco. And we took an engine over there, and coming back, we had quite a bit of fog. And the closer we got to the English Channel, the heavier the fog got. And our fuel was bouncing on E. I mean, and the pilot told us all to put on our parachutes, get ready, so we just may have to ditch it or whatever. And I told him, I said, well, you've got a better view than we have. You find a good sandy beach, just set her down, because you can get those that C-47 was converted enough where you get an engine in it and take off. And we looked, and before he hollered bail out, he said, I see a spot. And you could slow that old 47 down to where it was like, instead of 120, you'd be doing about 70, 75 miles an hour. Set it down on the beach in the sand. Didn't take long to get it stopped. And we had to spend the night. They had to come drag us out and tow that thing. Of course, we caught a boat. Went back across over there till they got the plane back to the other side into England. But that was the closest I ever had to bail out. I wasn't quite ready for that either.
ATC went out on guard and said, all 27 fighter wing aircraft return home immediately. I said, that's for me, because I'm going to be the last one to land, because when I land, I'm going to close the runway down, for sure. So everybody got back, and I did one practice approach, ILS with the GCA backup, and it went well, and I said, okay, here we go. And the very unique thing about it was, as I've come across the threshold on the final approach to land, I have felt a certain calm, a real certain calm. I knew who was there with me, and I could feel it. It was just, this is going to work. Now, the odds of it working good were probably less than 50%. The odds of survival were probably not much more than that, too, because the odds are that something really bad is going to break. It could be a disaster. I landed nicely and engaged the cable, just like on the carriers. We have a cable across the runway, big old thing. 1,500-foot run out's what it is, and went from 150 knots to 0 in 1,500 feet. And the nose hit the runway, and we were out. Shut the engines down and got out, and everybody said, man, that thing hit hard. It's probably a Class A, which to be a Class A, it's $1 million damage or loss of life. Well, when they repaired the jet, they costed it out and fixed it for $28,000. So that was a pretty good success story. Probably less than 1% chance of getting it that good, but I did it. So it was quite a night.
Flying in the Navy is pretty harrowing just by definition, but one time we flew through a typhoon, a hurricane, for 8 hours straight, and were buffeted around pretty badly. Our plane got hit by lightning numerous times. And when we broke out of the storm, we were near the Philippines, and we came into land. And my head pilot got vertigo and tried to fly us into the bay. There were little running lights on the boats out there in the bay, and they looked like stars, and he got confused from the stars above and the stars below. And so the tower had to yell at us over the radio to pull up, you're going to crash. So a young co-pilot took the controls physically away from the head pilot, and he turned us around and flew us back over the bay and right toward a mountain. And the tower had to yell at us again, you're going to crash into a mountain. And so he banked us to the side of the mountain. We missed it by feet. And then he was able to bring us around and slam us down on that runway.
There are several very proud things. At least right here is one of them. I was very proud to get my wings. And probably the proudest phone call I ever made was when I selected the Pro 6. And I called Mom and Dad and said, "You're talking to Colonel Select Robert Brewster," and they were very proud of that.
The recognition of the American troops, whatever they were, wherever they were, they recognized it. We could see it. They didn't have to tell us, but they were glad we were there. Now, I never heard any kickback or anything like that. The only thing we did have in England, they would have communist rallies. And being 21, 22 years old, we went to a couple of communist rallies and we spoke up and they escorted us out. As a grown person now, I don't think I would do that again, knowing what the communists did.
I think the thing I'm most proud of in my service was the fact that we were on the front lines of what was happening in the world at that time. We were serious about protecting America and protecting the American people from the threats that were going on at that time. I was proud to wear that uniform despite how we were treated by the civilians back home.
Early part of my tour without my family and living downtown Tokyo, and watching General MacArthur's staff car go by with his 5-star flag and the American flags, and seeing the Japanese people stop and bow to his staff car as the staff car went by, and it just gives you a memory of a feeling about the American flag.
Well, there was a lot of separation time. When I was first commissioned as a lieutenant, I was a controller, and I was sent to a radar site in Alaska for a year, and that was remote. And I was up there on December 12th, 1976, when our first son was born, and she was in South Carolina. That's 3,000 miles apart. And then I went to Saudi Arabia, and she said, stayed back and waited for the phone call, which never come, thankfully. But, you know, it's just, the separation was probably the biggest part of it. Went to Korea for a year, and was over there 11 for it then. But she got to come and visit. We had a good time with that, so it was nice.
My wife was alone in Charleston, South Carolina, with 3 small children, and we had a hurricane coming up the coast, Florida coast, and we had to fly our airplanes out. So I had to leave on a mission to get the airplanes out, and the hurricane came up the coast, got to Charleston, made a 90-degree turn, and the eye of the storm came right in over our base quarters at Charleston.
I think about everybody that has served and died and given of their life, time in life, time away from family, those kind of things. And some do choose to make it a career, and that's, I really respect those that do that.
I still get inspired every time I hear the anthem, and I get a great deal of pleasure from the response that I see on the part of an increasing number of people nowadays. But in the old days, obviously, everybody felt patriotic. And we're getting some of that back now, I think.
It really offends me when people don't pay respect to the flag of the United States, when they don't respect the flag by not standing for the anthem, not putting their hand over the heart, and because there are men and women that have literally died. And if you look into the history of the Star Spangled Banner, it was such an incredible story. I mean, people literally were dying to keep the flag up because that's what was keeping them focused when they were under such a horrendous attack.
Well, I look at it with pride, the national anthem and the flag. I'm honored to have served that flag for 33 years. That's the way I feel. No knees on my part.
If I can, I'm going to be standing. If I can, I'm going to have my cap or whatever over my heart. And if I was in uniform, I'd be saluting.